What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, a man who refers to farting as pass gas, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
I was talking about passing gas, Mike. Everyone should have a pseudonym for farting because it's a nasty word. What is yours?
Farting.
But like if kids were around.
Farting. If kids weren't around, I would say I shit myself.
Okay. So Michelle is trying to teach Carter toot. Like I tooted, and he thinks it's so funny to say he did it in somebody's face, which I don't know where he got it from. But because we don't do that in this household. But I push poot. Poot.
You push poo?
Push poot. Poot as a synonym for farting for
pushing
kids.
Poot. I'm pushing poot.
Pushing poot. I'm pushing poot. I'm pushing poot. I'm pushing poot.
See, Brandon, about to break into the children's music market around here. And if you want to say you were here for Brandon's meteoric rise through that, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us that 5-star rating and a review. You get singing at the beginning and the end of some of these podcasts from Brandon. And shouldn't we all be so lucky as to hear that? Also, make sure you check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel under the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist, where you can see Brandon doing that, see us doing this together here, and that's always a good thing, especially to start off the week when we got a lot of football to talk about coming off a Sunday. We'll give out our roses for the weekend around here, which we always do on Mondays. We will take a look at some moving and shaking in the world of college football, some wild cheating going on in the world of professional fishing, but Brandon, the bad man, was back again last night.
What bad man?
Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, okay. We can talk about that bad man and that wizard, Mike. But I feel a little behind coming on this podcast because in addition to all the football tweets that were flooding our timeline yesterday on Sunday, Game of Thrones or House of Dragon that I'm admittedly probably an episode behind on. It seems like shit got crazy in the House of Targaryen. So like I feel a little bit behind coming into this, even though I've just watched hours and hours of football. I didn't get my hours and hours of Game of Thrones. I know we're not talking about it, but when it comes to our audience members, I just feel like we're doing a disservice because we're not House of Dragoning it today.
Well, I mean, if we recorded Monday mornings instead of Sunday nights, maybe they would get some of that, but we don't, so they can't. If we want to pull back the kimono on this thing and let everybody know how this is going down, it's hard to have time to watch House of Dragon in real time when I'm sitting here watching Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico break down everything that's gone on Sunday Night Football. I'm still tired. I was out Pac-12 after darking in Autzen. It was awesome. Ooh. I had a blast in Eugene. It was so much fun. Oregon Stadium kicks ass. The whole game day atmosphere out there kicks ass. But watching them play Stanford in a game that started at 8 o'clock Pacific and having to be up on the call for that whole one definitely affected my ability to to ingest a bunch of content during the course of the day. So, Brandon, I don't know if my cup's got room for Game of Thrones coming off the Sunday that I just had.
I feel you, Mike. I feel you. We'll do a full... How about this? Producer hat on the fly. Full Game of Thrones recap episode will be on GoJo eventually. Maybe not even make it during a week episode. Like once everything's finished, we'll watch all of it, spend hours talking about it, and throw it up there. How do you like
I appreciate that we're gonna do this 5 episodes into the new season, or wherever we're at right now. However many episodes in, this is when we decide to rebrand ourselves as your home for House of the Dragon podcast material, which it still could be. And it still may be. Maybe. And if you'd like that, just let us know at GoJo Show on Twitter. It's not a bad thing coming off the weekend. Lord knows I watch plenty of it. It's got a lot of the same. It's done a good job of being close enough to Game of Thrones content and tone-wise. It is woven in a very complicated universe, I think, pretty effortlessly. I know a bunch of people who are watching it who didn't watch Game of Thrones, and since this is a prequel, that is possible. You can do this and have a good time. You'll miss some of the connective tissue that exists between the two worlds, but you can have a good time doing it, and you're going to get all of the same dragons, fire, battles, names of people you don't quite understand, and just always a little bit too much incest.
Yeah, a little bit too much. Oh my gosh, Mike.
Because
wouldn't even talk about that
because
part of
any
it.
incest is too much incest. I should make that abundantly clear.
Yes.
Like, I understand we have to do some accounting for eras when it comes to what Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon is portraying, but we just want to make it abundantly clear. We're an anti-incest podcast.
Very much anti-incest. I know I'm coming from Kentucky and Mike is coming from Connecticut, but we do not agree with kissing cousins, believe it or not. But Mike, I bring up Game of Thrones because there's a sweet spot in being an NFL fan where the Game of Thrones commentary starts to bleed over into the football commentary. Like I can't remember who was the first was called a White Walker, but I have a feeling it was the Patriots and Tom Brady. Like I'm feeling the mix and the blend starting to creep in a little bit. Maybe it is because X amount of weeks into the season and fans are realizing that they will accept this Game of Thrones reboot.
Yeah, no. People gave up very quickly on that high horse they were going to ride on coming off the end. I get people still wanting to hold them accountable for that and listen to George R.R. Martin remind everyone how he wasn't a part of the problem towards the end of that one. I'm just saying, I don't know why you would cut off your nose to spite your face here. You got new good content in a universe that you already trust for the most part. This has plenty of source material. Don't overthink this. This is like when we talked about some of the Pac-12 and those other conferences resisting playoff expansion because they were mad the SEC in Oklahoma and Texas went and talked behind their back. It's good for you. It's not going to always feel good, but it's good for you in the long run. So don't hurt yourself just because you want to prove a point to somebody else who doesn't care. That's just general life advice.
It's good for you, like watching Patrick Mahomes play football.
Full circle. Brandon Newman, professional. Yeah, and we got to do just that, man. Patrick Mahomes, who was part of the Chiefs' victory on Sunday Night Football. They won 41-31 in the game that ended up being played at Tampa after all of the indecision at the end of last week about what they would do surrounding Hurricane Ian. They were able to play the game there locally, and right from the jump, Tampa Bay fumbles the opening kickoff and gives it up to the Chiefs in their own zone. And you realize quickly this was going to be the polar opposite of what happened last weekend, Brandon, and their loss to the Indianapolis Colts, where they were the ones with the special teams miscue. Sky Moore was putting the ball on the mat. And Brandon, to me, that was why I didn't panic about what happened with Kansas City last weekend. Because to me, while again, turnovers undid the Bucs in that regard. I thought special teams was difficult for them over the course of the entire night. You had kickoff out of bounds, a bad punt mixed in there from a rookie punter. You had that fumble on the opening kickoff. They had their fair share of things that we may consider abnormal for the entire season. But overall, this is a Kansas City Chiefs team that we talked about better offensive line, went out there and ran the piss out of the ball here. 249 yards rushing in this game, part of which has to do with game flow. Patrick Mahomes and the connection with Travis Kelce, who went over and I believe crossed into the top 5 for tight end receiving yards all time, passing Rob Gronkowski. Yep. He had 9 for 92 in this game. A bulk of them came in the first half. And Brandon, that was it to me. They took advantage of game script and they went out here and they leaned on Tampa Bay up front in an area where when you look relative to what they've been on defense, which is by a bunch of metrics, DVOA, points per game going into tonight, they were considered by many the number one defense. You heard Patrick Mahomes call them that, which sometimes players do when they're being deferential, but the one area where right now they're having a little bit more trouble and are relatively less highly ranked is defense against the rush. And Akeem Hicks was inactive last night, still dealing with injury there. And so there's some personnel reasons why that might happen, but Kansas City took advantage of that. Like, you look in this game, everything you need to know about how the game script went is summed up by this. Kansas City had 189 yards rushing. So I said that wrong before. They had 189 yards rushing. Patrick Mahomes had 250 yards passing in this game. Tampa Bay had 3 yards rushing. And Tom Brady threw for 385 yards in this game. Because they were behind from the jump. Because they got buried early on and they were forced to go hurry up the entire time. And it changed the total dynamic of this game. It allowed Spags on the other side defensively for Kansas City to go and to send pressure at Tom Brady that I thought he did a pretty good job of evading for a fair amount of the night. You got most of his receiving weapons back. Mike Evans was an absolute man-child out there. Shout out to people like me that bet the Chiefs +1 and had Mike Evans on their fantasy team. ours is the kingdom of heaven, but you had the full complement of weapons back. Chris Godwin was back. Russell Gage was back. Julio Jones was out there, albeit in a limited capacity and didn't have a huge impact on the game. But Brandon, the Bucs' problems still kind of remain the same on offense. This is an offensive line that, while it got Donovan Smith back, I believe he was active for the game tonight, the rest of that's still a bunch of guys that weren't there last year, and those things are still taking some getting used to on that offense. And when you throw in the monkey wrench of the bad special teams and the imbalance to start this game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not built to be a comeback team right now, at least not against a team that's as complete overall as Kansas City is, which they may not have the Tyreek Hill option anymore, but we saw tonight they still have plenty of good ones.
Yeah, Mike, they have good enough weapons, but it's kind of back to the fact that the one big weapon in the total weapon is Patrick Mahomes. Right. To go back to the Bucs and their past old ultimate weapon with Tom Brady, I mean, this is the first time this season that the Bucs have scored over 20 points, and they had to. And I think that was one of the reasons why the over was hit, halfway, after halftime. But I think the Bucs' problem, you said it, their problem became the same problem. I think injuries was the problem. They became the same problem because even throughout that game, Godwin got hobbled. Mike Evans was the only one that, finished the game looking like standing on his own 2 feet the way he came into the game. And that defense looked like it was White looked hobbled a little bit. It just looked like the Bucs were needed another week.
Carlton Davis left that game with a stinger on defense. To your point, Cameron Brate, their starting tight end, left in the second half with concussion symptoms, I believe. He initially came back into the game, then they pulled him out, took him into the locker room, and the discussion on the broadcast was had about how hypersensitive they're going to be right now, which they always should be. But especially coming off of what happened last week with Tua. So, you're right. They got beat up a lot during the body of this game, and that's been the difficulty for Tampa to start this season.
Yeah, but obviously going back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what we saw from MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster and Sky Moore, you realize Clyde Edwards-Helaire until he got excised for dropping that wide open pass in the flats that could have been a touchdown.
Pacheco's nice, man. That kid's pushing him in that room, by the way. Isaiah Pacheco, the 7th-round pick, can tote the freaking rock.
He looks nice. Bro, he looks nice in number 10 running the ball for the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, the fact that he could even do that, you know what I mean? Like, I thought it was bold for him to just put 10 on his body. And I was like, okay, I see you.
Wait, you thought it was bold because he was a running back wearing 10 or because he wore Tyreek Hill's 10?
Because he wore Tyreek Hill 10. But also, not that he was but the fact that he was a skilled player for the Kansas City Chiefs wearing 10.
See, I think it was bold that he's a running back wearing 10, just the same way that I think it's an affront to God that someone as fast as Sky Moore is wearing 24. That's an abomination. There's no wonder. Ooh. Now, the second half of that game, you're looking for positives for the Chiefs coming out of this game, right? Because most of this, to me, goes back to, like you said, injuries for Tampa Bay, and then Kansas City capitalizing on early turnovers and early miscues by the Bucs. The relationship between Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes is well worn. We know that one's legit. Seeing him spread it around to everyone else, MVS back healthy in this game, was the first real big shot downfield for Patrick Mahomes in this offense that went east and west, low and slow to start the game, and then started to hit him over the top in the second half. They understood how to play the role very maturely of the team out in front in this game. And part of that was motivation. We heard Patrick Mahomes talk about how much coming back and winning down there where they had lost the Super Bowl and they had to listen to them celebrate and their fans celebrate, how much that was actual motivation for them. And I get it's not a playoff game. Like, it's not a true revenge game because the same stakes aren't on the line, blah, blah, blah. But you could see this was a very dialed-in Kansas City team. The message should be then, you got to have that approach to every game. It just can't be when you're playing the primetime game. But we're all human. And we've all done the thing where we've gotten up more for a certain helmet sticker or a certain team that we're playing, or the fact that we've got a bigger audience for it. That's just human being stuff, and the Kansas City Chiefs showed that. But when they're healthy and when they are on top of their stuff, they understood not just they got the gifts handed to them by the other side, but they knew exactly how to use them and how to make sure they kept Tampa Bay at arm's distance because this game never got close.
No, but Ty Bowles, man, I think it comes down to this defensive coordinator mindset. Obviously, you have Tom Brady, the one should be the offensive coordinator on the field for the Bucs, but it just feels like a defensive led team and all the negative connotations that come along with that. Like too conservative, and like the Cardinals that score a majority of their points in the fourth quarter. Like the Bucs can't be that same team.
No, but I think a lot of that's still roster limitations right now. I think a large part of who they are now is who they have to be right now. And when you've got that caliber of defense, that when they're healthy, and again, accounting for the offense that they face, they've been giving up 9 points a game coming into this outing. They got done dirty early. Yeah. Game script is such a huge, I think especially in the NFL, like it's so much different than college because you see it among the competent teams, fewer mistakes made, and there's such a close gap in talent that those kind of things really, really undermine your effort with all the hidden yardage there. But even accounting for that, Tampa Bay, still really good in a lot of critical areas on defense. The back end of that defense has made a massive improvement over last year. It's just going to be the offense catching up enough to balance it out, and that's going to require these guys being healthy enough on the field for a long enough time together so that Tom Brady's not throwing passes to guys that were just signed a few days ago, week in and week out. That continuity, we talked about that in year one when Brady came over in Tampa Bay, that it for them at the beginning of that season where they ended up winning the Super Bowl, it still took a little while at the beginning portion of that season for them to really gel to the level that ended up propelling them through December and January football.
I hear you, but I don't like talking about weapons when it comes to Tom Brady-led football teams because, like Joy said, she says she doesn't want to take points away from people playing with good people. I think the exact opposite has happened with Tom Brady, right? We've always given him a little bit more credit because he's been able to do what he's done with what he's done it with. So I don't want to press the panic button just yet, but the Patrick Mahomes, you talked about the relationship, we know all about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce up to this point, and I agree. But I didn't go that crazy over that Patrick Mahomes touchdown pass to
this is so fascinating because this is consistently what you do. You look at the impressive plays. You did this with George Pickens' catch the other week. You look at impressive plays. Brandon, I seriously just think your body is so hardwired to zig where everyone else zags that when you see people enjoying this play, you're physically incapable. Like, I'm not blaming you because it's part of your wiring. I forgive you. I free you from this burden.
Listen, I understand that that's what it seems like. That like I have enough of a track record that you think that like this is how my brain works. But I'm bringing it up because I want you to show me the light, Mike. Like I understand this is Patrick Mahomes. It's not like we saw Zach Wilson do this. You know what I mean? Like we've seen almost everything from Patrick Mahomes, and if you haven't seen everything from Patrick Mahomes, when you see it for the first time, and number 12 is wearing it from the Chiefs jersey, then you shouldn't be surprised.
15. If
15.
he did it wearing 12, maybe that would spice it up. Maybe he needs like a Kobe Bryant number change in the middle of his career. Keep it fresh for you, Brandon, because this is like the one thing, like, I understand when people get this way about something like the dunk contest because it's whittled down into the purest form, right? We've seen every dunk at this point. So the dunk contest has become comparatively less fun. You get less of the big name guys doing it. When you have stuff like this happen with Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar, who Houdini'd his way out of some bullshit sack that should have happened in that game, it's happening at full speed in the middle of a contest that's not predetermined. It's not siloed down. This isn't baseball where it's a one-on-one matchup. There's 21 other people on the field with these guys at a given time. And Patrick Mahomes found his way to 1, outrun a sack, 2, pirouette away from another, and then 3, as he is coming up against the zero barrier like he's the goddamn meteor in Armageddon, has the wherewithal to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then just pop the ball up over the top like he's just getting some chunk back over a volleyball net. I don't know how that can't impress you when there are literally 11 people on the field on the other side of the ball actively hunting him while he does that in real time.
Yes, Mike, but he's better than all those players.
I understand that, but it's Patrick still
Mahomes
cool
for a reason. Like listen, like all the players you mentioned, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, when I see them do quarterback-ill things that has not been seen on the NFL level for so long, all I think of is finally somebody's playing actual football out there, street ball. Like, don't let the X's and O's and the game plan fool you from like just going out there and making a play, right? And I think I've seen these quarterbacks do that. So when I see a play just get made, all I think is finally. I don't think, wow, somebody look at Patrick Mahomes' forehead. Is there a lightning bolt on it? Is he Harry Potter? Like, it's like, no, he's a great football player. He's a great quarterback. He does this better than a lot of other people. That's why he is where he is and has a Super Bowl at his young, ripe age already. So when he goes out and does crazy things, it's like, yeah, it's like how many times do you have to watch Tom Brady come back with a minute left on the clock to realize that this is something Tom Brady does? Like, I do understand, like, oh, this happened again. It's history. Like, yes, let's do a golf clap for it. But to act like it's the first time, like, I mean, he's already here. He's with us, Patrick Mahomes. Like, we get the chance to see him every week. Like, let's just stop acting like it's like a wheel was literally reinvented in front of us.
See, you know what, Brandon? I appreciate this because you're just the Nick Saban of watching NFL football, meaning you're content to pull all the joy out of it because you have an expectation of greatness based on how fortunate we've been to have all these guys out here in the league right now. You look at this and say, this is your job. I expect this. And then the minute it's done, well, I got to get back on the phone with recruits right now because we're already behind on making the next great play that all the rest of you normies are going to ooh and ah at. Brandon Newman, built different, Nick Saban of NFL football watching here. That's a compliment. That's something you get to wear.
No, I just feel like maybe people didn't play NFL Street when it was out enough, I don't think. Because, like, these are standard plays.
These are standard plays. All right, we will try and continue to look out for plays that may cross the high water mark set by Brandon Newman of NFL Street legend. In the meantime, Brandon, why don't we look at some other games that were compared to this less impressive? And so I really shudder to feel like you're going to be able to muster up any joy for these conversations about the Bailey Zappi-led Patriots taking the Green Bay Packers to overtime in Lambeau. What the hell was this game? And it was just that. The final score of this one, as I pull it up in front of me right now, the Green Bay Packers went out and got a 27-24 win in overtime against the Patriots, who came into this game. Mac Jones, high ankle sprain, so he's out right now. Brian Hoyer going into this game. Brian Hoyer leaves with injury, I believe concussion in the middle of this game. And so enter the rookie, late-round draft pick, Bailey Zappi, who was an all-everything record-setting quarterback at Western Kentucky last year. Just chucked the ball all over the yard, I think over 6,000 yards in his Western Kentucky season last year. But, Brandon, as fun as it was to see Bailey Zappi go out there and look exactly like Mac Jones. Like, all I could think of was when you go to buy paper, there's the different kinds, the different thicknesses that you can buy, and one of the options is stock white. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, looks-wise, stock white. They are the exact same base model, build-a-wee character that all of us are given at the start of some sort of video game avatar creation process.
I would agree with you outside of the fact that Zappi wishes his trunk was as thick as Mac Jones.
I guess I was talking about the neck up. You're right. Like, okay, Mac Jones has a wagon. That's fine. We can say that out loud here. This is not objectifying men. This is just stating the facts. We see things. We report things. That's called journalism.
Yeah, I mean, you would be very uncomfortable being around a room of college football coaches because, boy, how fast do they get to the butt?
Man,
the trunk on a man? Just look at him. Look at that.
Dude, I mean, draft season. How often do we have to listen to that from Mike Mayock talking about bubble butts? That guy loves a good bubble butt.
Oh, man. Oh, remember Mike Mayock? The guy he always brought to practice with him was that guy who had calves as big as his hips.
No, but I don't. But again, that's the point, is a stout lower body is always going to leave an impression on the hearts and minds of people that you go and see. It's a good reminder to not skip leg day because this man's calves are lodged in your brain for life.
They really are. Mike Mack's right-hand man, calves, biggest I've ever seen in my life.
I actually did that, and I don't know the guy's name, but I will never forget his biceps as long as I lived, because I went with my dad when he was covering a college football game. He was covering the Insight.com Bowl when Larry Fitzgerald's Pitt Panthers were playing in that out in Arizona.
Ooh,
and so I went with my dad because bowl season, it was, we were on winter break for school, so I got to go on these trips with him. And I went out and we were at practice watching it. And I remember vividly watching Larry Fitzgerald in the middle of practice, sky in the end zone, reach over 3 people, high point of football, and look incredible doing it. And then we were walking off and my dad is chatting with some of the coaches. And then we were talking, he went to go chat with Larry Fitzgerald since he was obviously the star of that team. And we're walking back and I am standing there as a little kid next to what will go on to be one of the greatest receivers in NFL history. And all I can do is marvel in awe at one of their linebackers whose name I still don't know to this day, who had biceps the size of my head walking next to him. I was blown away because this man had just been absolutely hammer timing 90s in the curl rack like it was his job. And I cared nothing for Larry Fitzgerald and his bubble butt. It was wild.
Hey, that linebacker did that for you, though. You know what I mean? Like, you got to, when somebody puts in that work with the hammer curls and all that work on the arms, you got to marvel. You got to marvel.
People think arm day is easy and fun, man. There's a lot of times I'll skip it at the end of the workout. That's a grind. That's mental warfare.
Really? Those reps, like that last set of those reps again, the last one for the arms, don't do it if you have anything to do afterwards. I'll say that.
Exactly.
Because trying to wipe your butt after a good arm lift, damn near impossible.
Oh, going to reach and try and scrub a different part of your body in the shower? Enjoy the cramp. Smell you later. Definitely don't try and give yourself a haircut because that's how you end up looking the way Aaron Rodgers does right now. Forget everything else that's happened with him. The hairstyle choices continue to remain a cry for help. But, Brandon, that cry for help also extended to the field. So part of the reason this game was as close as it was, 1, Patriots O-line got back to whooping ass. 2, Green Bay defense that me and many others were high on to start the season, especially up front right now, not up to the fight. Jair Alexander was out on the back end, but he's not the one that was getting punked up front the way that they were. And Kenny Clark's a phenomenal player. They waxed rightly poetic about him during this whole game, but the Patriots' offensive line was back to doing last year's stuff. Just thick double teams, running power down there. Ramondre Stevenson was giving them absolute hell. And so all of that combined with Aaron Rodgers playing terribly. Aaron Rodgers had an 11.2 passer rating in the first half, his lowest of any half in the 210 games that he has started. It was statistically his worst half of football as a professional. He threw his 4th ever pick 6. Think about that. 4th ever
Insane.
pick 6 for the efficiency god. And so all of those things led to Aaron Rodgers saying after the game, like, the way we did this is not going to be sustainable. And that's because, again, like Kansas City, they lost a big-time weapon. The biggest difference that you saw for the Green Bay Packers in this game, and some of it got alleviated in the second half. They started running more play-action stuff. They got Allen Lazard more involved. He was able to make some big-time plays, him and Romeo Doubs. But it still showed up. When they needed an outlet last year, Devontae Adams was open. He was open around the line of scrimmage and could make one guy miss and go for 5 or 6 yards. He was open downfield and stacking defensive backs like it was his job. And now it's just harder. There are fewer open bodies as easily as it came for Green Bay last year. And that adjustment's happening. You don't have the guys that are used to making as contested catches. These are young guys all across the board outside of Randall Cobb, who definitely look good out there playing, and certainly Allen Lazard. But even with those two, it's just different than the guy you had that much time with. So that's the adjustment period that's going on, and it requires Aaron Rodgers to be great. And we're right, like your point about Patrick Mahomes serves well to Aaron Rodgers here over the course of normal football, which is if he has a bad half, this team doesn't have a shot. They are not built at this point to be able to weather that. And this is still a team that ran the football really well. But as we see time and time again, even if you're able to run the football really well in modern pro football, it shrinks the margin and makes you have to deal with these kind of close games against teams you shouldn't necessarily be in that kind of cage fight with. So Aaron Rodgers got it together in the second half. I think according to ESPN Stats and Info, season high 9 air yards per attempt in the second half after averaging a season low 5.2 in the first 3 weeks of the season. So changed it up in the second half. And like I said, I think a lot of that was leaning more on play action. You had the running game that set that up, running for 199 on the night. But like this was a Patriots team that it didn't matter who was at quarterback. The game plan was largely going to look the same way, and that's why even with this rookie, they were able to drag this thing to overtime somehow.
Yeah, I was very, very surprised to see it, especially as it unfolded, Mike. But I think one of the biggest changes that the Packers made was I'm not a big you got two running backs, you got two quarterbacks. Like I feel like if you have two, you kind of have one. And it's kind of going into the game, but as the game manifests, you should definitely have one bell cow. And I think the Packers ended up winning this game because A.J. Dillon became the guy that, you know, the Patriots just couldn't stop, especially in between the tackles. And then once he started catching some balls coming out of the backfield, compared to what Adam Jones was doing, A.J. Dillon was definitely the go-to. And I thought because they had an option to have a big back like that. I mean, you saw what Derrick Henry finally woke up. We won't even touch that game. But it was good to see good, strong running backs kind of hitting their stride at this point in time in October. When October, November, that's when, you know, these teams are going to need to start leaning on the running games.
Well, and it's important, one, to have that ability because you're right. That's something that I think Green Bay has run into trouble with when they've gotten into the postseason is not being able to play. And everyone talks about it. Cold weather football, like I am as bought into a lot of the numbers and analytics around football as anybody. But it's hard to look at the way it's gone for them in the last couple postseasons and think when things shrink down and all of a sudden the way you've been winning, airing it out becomes a lot tougher, having this tool in your belt is going to be hugely helpful. And it's just a bridge program right now. They're getting those guys, like you said, this game wasn't as much, not as many catches out of the backfield, but they're using them as receivers out of the backfield. They're offsetting some of the production as they wean these younger guys along. And so Aaron Rodgers, in the meantime, just can't afford to be this bad. And he was dreadful in the first half of this game by his own admission and by anyone's eyes. And so this is another one of those. Them and Tampa Bay continue to fall in the same bucket for me, which is I'm not going to worry yet because these guys have shown over a long course of time they've been able to adjust to a lot. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady have both played with a lot of different teammates in a few different systems and managed to make it work because of their singular greatness that we've seen haven't waned in recent years. They've both been, Aaron Rodgers the back-to-back MVP. Tom Brady has been in those conversations each of the last few seasons and won a Super Bowl. I have the trust in them. It's just going to be purely, does Tampa Bay's roster get healthy in time, and can Green Bay stay healthy? You had David Bakhtiari back in this game in the last two games now on more of a full-time basis. We saw how much it mattered to that group's ability to run the ball. It's now going to be, all right, how much can these guys in the wide receiver room grow up? And then can the defense be more stout up front in the meantime also? Because that's another group. Rashawn Gary can get after the freaking quarterback, man. I'm as big an Isaiah Winston as there is, and that guy's certainly dealt with a lot of injuries over on New England. Rashawn Gary wore him out in this game. He's so physically gifted off the edge as a speed guy and then has the ability and the base to come up and then affect you with power. He's a terrifying combination, and it was on display. It's why I think you have so many teams that were excited to reach for guys like Odafe Owe that the Baltimore Ravens took.
Yes.
Guys that are incredibly toolsy and a little bit more raw as far as down in, down out technical pass rushers. Because you've seen Rashawn Gary has been the development case that would be the poster for that. I won't say it's like Josh Allen at quarterback, but relative to when he first got into the league to now, it is a very, very stark difference.
Yeah, I mean, even was it Dietrich Wise Jr. for the Patriots?
Yeah.
Like he's just. But one of the reasons why I think I agree with you that the Packers and the Bucs are in the same, you know, tier is because of the quarterbacks. Obviously, all the rest of the stuff that comes around the team will come with it. But Mike, we just saw Aaron Rodgers get his 500th touchdown pass yesterday.
Yep.
And he's still about 100 shy of Brady on the all-time list. Like, I know it's not really chasing not apples to apples. And congratulations for Aaron Rodgers being one of 5 quarterbacks to kind of meet that benchmark when it comes to touchdowns. But the fact that Tom Brady is on that list and he is still Tom Brady kind of makes it feel like you don't really worry about Aaron Rodgers until he plays another until it's playoff time. Really.
And they're going to have plenty of time to work that out, to your point there, because I don't want to play too much of the schedule game, but you look at their upcoming games. the Giants, who had to go Wildcat for a little bit because their quarterback room got so banged up in this game, the Jets and Zach Wilson, who is back, who we'll talk about in a little bit, the Commanders, who look dreadful. Then you get the Bills, but then it's, the Lions, the Cowboys, the Titans. It's not a murderer's row by any stretch, and so you're going to have ample opportunity for these guys to have fertile ground to grow on. So I don't worry about the Packers there. The defense definitely is something to monitor, though, because that did not look like the unit I had in my head going into this season personnel-wise, and how that tracks is going to go a long way once we get to, like you described, that upper crust of competition. But, Brandon, before we get to roses, let's address the jersey you're wearing right now. How we feeling coming off that Ravens game? That was a roller coaster of emotions that I was watching on my cell phone from a taxi for the majority of the time. Baltimore got out in front pretty early, and the Bills come back. It was a rainy, sloppy track that absolutely has to factor into this for people who, like me, took that sucker's bet of 51 as the over-under for this game. The Bills won 23-20 and dashed my hopes of that, but pretty impressive comeback by them.
Yes, an impressive comeback by the Bills. They woke up. I'm beside myself, Mike, because I didn't even realize I was wearing this jersey still, because I just was. I'm in my Lamar Jackson jersey, and Lamar Jackson did good things, but Lamar Jackson did the thing that is really bad for his contract negotiation, where he made the play that is the reason why the Baltimore Ravens could no longer possibly win that game. Threw an interception in a time where we could not afford an interception. I don't know, Mike. It was good to see the AFC, like the juggernauts of the AFC, go after one another. Obviously, we just kind of got that with the Dolphins and the Bills, but you mentioned it before, the joy that the Ravens are up in that upper crest, the upper crust of competition in the AFC. And even though the Bills beat the Ravens at home, making it a 5-game losing streak at home for John Harbaugh and the Ravens, I still think that concept of the Ravens being one of the top teams in the AFC was solidified.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, they were up 20-3 in the second quarter of this game. They got out very early. Part of that was early. The Bills made their mistakes early, and the Ravens made theirs late in this game. And I would love
This is what the Ravens always do.
I would love to see both of these teams on a neutral track, because they're we talked about two statistically the best offenses in the NFL, and we saw the rain have an effect on that. It was the same weather for everyone, so Buffalo deserves credit for the comeback on that, not diminishing it one bit. A lot of it's going to point to, and you just did there, the decision that got made late in this game. So with about 4 minutes left in this game, the Ravens had driven down, had a chance to score. The game was tied 20-all. They get down there on the 1-yard line of the Buffalo Bills, and it gets to 4th and goal from the 1. And instead of going to kick the field goal that would have put them up at that point of the game, John Harbaugh, who made no bones about the way he approaches this. They have an analytically based approach. They have this well-researched, and they go through this based on what they have looked into and what the numbers tell them in that situation. And we see John Harbaugh anyway, even if you want to throw that away. Aggressive football guy. Him and Lamar Jackson on the sideline. You want to go for it. All that rah-rah shit that people love. They decide to go for it in this case, which I totally understand. I always liken this stuff to blackjack, man. If you hit on 16 or stay on 16, either's fine with me, but do it. And your team, if they know that's what we're going to do all the time, is prepared for that stuff. Lamar Jackson just made the mistake you can't make there, because the whole idea of going for it on 4th and goal from the 1 is if you miss it, now the other team is going 1st and 10 from their own 1 in the shadow of their own end zone. Right. It's a really low percentage as far as a points per drive situation. It's a really low percentage scoring opportunity for the opposing team. And so that's supposed to be the risk reward, especially for a Ravens defense that, man, on the back end, I thought it's really improved. We go back to the Dolphins game where they were falling all over themselves. You're starting to see that safety room with Kyle Hamilton come together, who I think kind of had the lights on moment last week. You're starting to see them sort of operate better together. It was just Lamar Jackson throws an interception to Jordan Poyer instead of throwing it out of the back of the end zone or dirting it. He gets pressured. He has to back up. He sees what he thinks is an open receiver and ends up throwing it to Jordan Poyer. And so now all of a sudden, Buffalo gets to start that drive from the 20. They're moved out and they've got all this space. And then the math changes significantly. So this is the first time this season Lamar's made the back-breaking mistake for this team. And I don't think it has any indictment on his contract situation or anything like that. I think at this point, it would take quite a slide against far worse competition than what he did yesterday for me to have that be any indictment on him long term. Like, that was just one bad play in a spot where you couldn't have it in a team that has empowered him to go out and make plays in critical moment, which long term, and again, what this analytics approach is about is maximizing your ability to be successful long term. It is a process-driven approach. And the process not only of being aggressive in those spots, Brandon, but the process of empowering Lamar Jackson to go out and be special in critical moments because you've seen it benefit you in the past, to me is smart long-term business. You want that playmaker making plays.
Yeah, but that decision has been made a long time ago. I don't think Lamar Jackson is out there hesitant. Like the times
I'm not
where
saying he is.
Lamar Jackson was at quarterback and Joe Flacco was lined up as a slot
I'm not saying that's what it is, Brandon. I'm saying you want him to take chances. He's got incredible physical gifts, and so I'm sure for him, he believes I can fit it in that window. And I'm saying more often than not, I trust him to make the great play. And so I don't want to pull him back from that too much. Yeah, he'll get coached to, in this situation, hey, the one thing we can't afford in this particular moment is an interception in the end zone because it undermines the way that we were going to go about this. That's something Lamar's got to know and do better on. But as far as him taking big-time risks in more calculated ways in other moments, you don't want to pull him back from that too much.
No, absolutely you don't. But I guess the way this game ended, that gave me pause, and I do want to give him a little bit of slack. It's just that one decision that really ends the game. And I think as someone who wants to protect Lamar and a defender of Lamar, I want that decision to kind of be boiled down to the defense if it comes to ending the game in a negative way. And if it's for the offense, I want it to be a play that Lamar makes, and I want it to matter, and I want to be against a team that matters. And this was the biggest team that mattered, not only because it was the next team, but it was the Bills led by Josh Allen.
I'll say this. I think one of the other things that continues to show up is part of this is because they're not whole up front right now. Ronnie Stanley's been back practicing, but still wasn't ready to go in this game. And Daniel Faalele is maybe a good player someday. Big-bodied guy coming out of Minnesota. But on that play, almost immediate pressure from him there that ended up driving Lamar out of there. That was another big part of this, is that they couldn't hold up. That Bills' defensive front is lights out. But this is about what you're going to see over the long term. And if Ronnie can ever come back and be healthy in that spot, it changes the equation so much. I know we're beating a dead horse on this, but it showed up again in the biggest moment, and it's kind of hard to ignore that Lamar is going out at the helm of one of the best passing offenses in the NFL without having his blind side always accounted for in the way that we believe can still be possible for this team. So, awesome game. Again, I'd love to see them on a dry track and watch both of those offenses really hum at full speed. Brandon, we got to give out some roses here on this podcast. But before we do that, we got to tell people where they can get some sunglasses, Brandon, because Knockaround Sunglasses, friend of the podcast, proud supporter of the podcast, people we really appreciate, have been doing it big, and they want to help you do it big without a big number attached to the price tag. Knockaround's got polarized sunglasses that cost right around $30 a pair. I know what you're thinking. Crazy. They couldn't possibly look that good at $30 a pair. That's fine. Everybody's wrong about something, and you're wrong about that notion here. Knockaround has 15 different frames, a ton of different colors, a little bit of something for everyone here. You got a bunch of custom options. You can be like Brandon, who's got them in Lakers colors, who's got them in Notre Dame colors, who's got them in, I think, Kentucky colors, just in general, who, if you're watching on YouTube right now, just has these beautiful ones with the orange reflective lenses that are polarized. Again,
these are the sports, Mike.
Those are for sports. You can use them for sports. You can use them for running. They're Runner's World Magazine, a 2021 editor's choice. They got that little rubber nose thing so they don't slip and move around on you when you're out here grinding. Like I said, doing active head stuff. Who knows? I don't judge your lifestyle. You don't judge mine. Lightweight. They have great clarity. Knockaround's polarized sunglasses are high-quality polarized sunglasses that come at a really affordable price. We want to help make that even better. You go check out their huge range of shades at knockaround.com. And when you do, use promo code GoJo at checkout. It's going to get you 20% off. our friends, knockaround.com. But it is Monday around here. Monday means that we honor not only this podcast and the choices we've made, but the Bachelor and Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise that's getting started by giving out roses, because the Bachelor and Bachelorette franchises are sports. We each get 2 roses to give the deserving people out of the world of sports this weekend. Brandon, who do you want to give a rose to first?
Ooh, me first. I like this. All right, Mike. Okay. Zachary Bartholomew Wilson, will you take this rose? I really don't know if Zach Wilson's middle name is Bartholomew. He just looks like the type. You know what I mean?
Z-Bart would be a good nickname too.
Ooh, I don't know how to say names, Mike. Could you pronounce this for me? Zach's middle name, I was right with Zachary. Kapono.
Capono?
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 Yeah. Zachary Capono Wilson. We should have known he had that dog in him. He's got a middle name Capono. But Zach Wilson, will you accept this rose? Mike, everyone's talking about Kenny Pickett's debut as the Jets faced off against the Steelers at that new name stadium in Pittsburgh, Three Rivers City. But the debut that I want to talk about is Zach Wilson. After coming back from injury, after he got injured during the preseason game, they let him come back and take his time. And 24-20 victory, Mike, where Zach Wilson led. I'm trying to get this right. It was an 85-yard touchdown drive and a 65-yard touchdown drive, I believe, at the end of that game. Zach Wilson was obviously a little rusty, as predicted. He was 18 of 36 for 252 yards and 2 interceptions. But Mike, during the fourth quarter, where it matters, he was 10 of 12, 128 yards and a touchdown. He had that last touchdown pass. They did a Philly special where he caught a touchdown pass and then hit a nasty, gritty, real smooth. And
was his
everybody
gritty good?
Was bringing back when he was Mike. The gritty was Mike. It was. I'll say it like this: it was about 5 times better than Mac Jones's gritty and 10 times better than Adam Thielen's.
Well, so I'll say this: Adam Thielen's number 1 is the one that I thought was going to end the gritty, especially for white people. I thought like we had finally flown too close to the sun, and that was our Icarus moment. Mac Jones, I'll give him credit. I feel like everything he does tongue-in-cheek, understanding I look bad doing this, and so I'm giving everyone a laugh. Zach Wilson, because again that dog is in his chest, I believe approaches it earnestly.
Mike, when he got after it. He got after it as if, like, I'm about to stunt on everybody right now. Like, y'all worry about my ankle. Yeah. And I'm about to gritty on y'all fools.
It was like when Kevin Durant was dancing before the finals, coming back from his calf injury to show everyone he was all right.
Gosh. Yes.
Let's hope this doesn't go as bad as that.
Honestly, like, I'm very excited for what could happen, but for him to have that injury and Jets fans to kind of just deal with everything that has come with the Jets season off top, to get 2 road wins, and then for Zach Wilson to start off his season this way, away, like against the Pittsburgh Steelers, like a good defense at this point in time, Mike, it feels fun to see. And also the dueling debuts with Kenny Pickett, who had a great game himself. It was just a very fun game, but Zach Wilson, you deserve this rose.
Kenny Pickett had my favorite stat line, and I think it was Field Yates that pointed this out. He had 13 pass attempts in this game. He was 10 of 13 for 120 yards and 3 interceptions, which means not a single ball that he threw hit the ground. And that is a place to start. You can get better from there, but it's a pretty solid place to start. And I'd imagine at this point, it's going to be Kenny Pickett season from here on out. So very fun to watch those. That was a game of teams that weren't going to make me feel much. So once I got to see the young quarterbacks out there, I was like, all right, there's something to be interested here among teams that I don't believe are really capable of much on the top end at this point. Brandon, I will stick in the NFL at first and go, DK Metcalf, will you accept this rose? Because in the middle of this game, DK Metcalf was carted into the locker room. And now initially that caused a lot of people to worry. We were looking and going, oh my God, what's wrong? This great receiver. The Seahawks had a phenomenal day for people that weren't dumbasses like me who bet the under in that game and got absolutely walloped, who didn't watch the Seahawks alone eclipse the over-under by themselves, as Geno Smith, I think, had the fantasy quarterback moment of the day. But DK Metcalf got carted off, and we heard that on the broadcast and all freaked out. Then we got the upcat. update that DK Metcalf, who you saw very calmly being jacked as shit just sitting on the cart, got carted off because he had to go take a dump. The bathroom at in Detroit at their field is apparently one of the furthest away from the field for the visitors' locker room. And as he tweeted out, that clinch walk wouldn't have made it. So, DK Metcalf, I applaud you for owning your poo moment and going out there and living your truth, man.
He looked so calm, Mike, on the when he was getting carted off. You were a little confused, like, and he's having a game too.
He looked calm because he was trying to breathe through it. You know, when you start to get close to the bathroom, when you're coming back from a road trip, and all of a sudden it drops into the chamber and that thing's ready to go, and you got to just breathe through it, because the last thing he wants to do. I know they were wearing blue pants that day, but you don't want blue with that brown hue. Nope.
You can get away with the brown hue, Mike. You know you can get away with the brown hue with them dark blues. But, yes, shouts out to DK Metcalf being honest about what was going on. But I do think it's a little bit, just a little bit diva-ish for him to ask for the cart.
Bro, listen, as someone who used to take the elevator to the second floor for class, I applaud people working smarter, not harder.
Okay, that's different. That's different.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah, because you got to shit. You ain't got to shit. Okay, but yeah, that's why I think it's different.
Brandon, speaking of number 2, who's your second rose go to?
Ooh, speaking of number 2 and speaking of shit, Kirk Cousins, will you accept this rose? Kirk Daniel Cousins, what? Why are you?
That's a really tough way to introduce a person you're technically giving a positive rose to.
Well, that's not a tough way. I'm being all positive as possible. This person usually is shit on primetime games, and he turned his luck around, except for the fact that he had to wake up early as hell for it to happen.
Wait, are we calling the 9:30 Eastern London game a primetime win for Kirk Cousins? I don't think that counts. I don't think Sunday morning is primetime.
Mike. But the fact that it had to be a double doink just for Kirk Cousins to win this game, in a game where he did a good job, Mike. He did a really, really good job. And shouts out to Justin Jefferson. I'm not giving a rose to him because I keep talking about Justin Jefferson, but because he said he was going to be the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL by the end of the season, I'm keeping track of his stats, Mike. And dude is doing real things. He's the NFL. He's leading wide receivers in reception yards. Justin Jefferson had 10 Kurt balls for 147 yards and a rushing touchdown against his hometown Saints, obviously in a new country. He said it would have been better if he could do it at home in New Orleans, but he had never been to London, so this will do. But yes, I said it about Justin Jefferson.
I like the idea that Kirk balls are like Kohl's dollars or Kohl's cash, where especially if you go over across the pond, now you've got to worry about the exchange rate over there for Kirk passes.
But that's the thing, Mike. He had success back in the day when he was with the R Words, starting quarterback there when they had to play in London. But on the 31st, this is a cool stat. This is the 31st game played in London ever, right? For the last play of the 31st game ever played in London in October to come down to the last play of regulation, I think October is going to be spooky with these NFL lines, Mike, with these outcomes.
I appreciate that you've become the thing that you claim to most hate in the world, which is, as you called them, the ESPN made-up stats.
Nope.
Because that's exactly what you just lionized here. And I love this for you, Brandon. This is growth.
Okay,
you contain multitudes.
Listen.
You're allowed to be so many things at once. I love this for you.
Almost. I was so mad at you, I almost called you my brother's name.
Ooh, I felt that.
You heard that?
Oh.
Lance, if you don't shut the
You did the move where like an angry parent goes through the Rolodex and calls one kid every one of their siblings' names, and sometimes even the dog name.
Sometimes, Mike, constantly calling all the kids everything before I get to who I actually want to scream at. But no, Mike, there's a difference between the wild random ESPN stat. I almost saved one for you because I saw it, but it was so good that I didn't want to piss myself off and like proving something. I want you to be like, "Oh, that's great." But there's a difference between those stats and tea leaves, right? This is breadcrumbs leading us down a way of thinking, and the way of thinking that we need to be thinking is you can't predict shit in October. October is going to be weird and spooky, Mike. Happy October to you, by the way. Get that triangle away.
Happy
from me.
October. I'm opening up my third eye so that I can see the tea leaves that you speak of here, Brandon. I hope that October remains unpredictable because, Brandon, for my second rose, I want to give it to the team that has dominated September and August. Kansas football. Will you accept this rose?
Oh, my gosh.
I am so freaking excited for these guys, man. Kansas ranked in the AP Top 25 for the first time since Week 8 of 2009. Brandon, they checked in at 24 then. They're ranked 19th in the country now. They're 5-0. They just beat Iowa State this past weekend, and now College Game Day is going to Lawrence, Kansas for the first time ever. They were one of the few schools that still had never had a visit from College Game Day. And so, yeah, now they're getting for game day. Lance Leipold, their head coach, is getting all this buzz for some other jobs that are coming up because he's been balling that hard. Jalen Daniels, their quarterback, is a guy that is tracking as legitimate Heisman contender if he keeps this up. They're going to face TCU, who also comes in scorching hot. By the way, TCU and UCLA firmly entered the chat this past weekend, blowing the doors off of Oklahoma and Washington, respectively, to announce their presence. But pump for them. Like, listen, Kansas has a tough road ahead. They go TCU, Oklahoma, at Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Texas, and Kansas State. It's a tough schedule lining up for them. Doesn't diminish what they've done now. Doesn't diminish that they deserve to be celebrated. They deserve to be ranked last week. And I'm just glad the cowards over at the Associated Press finally felt like showing up to the party here. Even though you came late, they're getting their moment of celebration. And even if it does level out a little bit from here, Brandon, even if they do lose some games down the stretch, they deserve to be celebrated in this way. And I'm glad that College Game Day is giving them that recognition.
Yeah, they deserve it. They deserve it. They at least need 1 week. I almost feel they should be, instead of big signs, they should be throwing food at the College Game Day people for taking so long to show up. But instead of like focusing on this Kansas City or this Kansas team, which I'm not going to, I'm looking at their schedule. Last game of the season, Kansas versus Kansas State. I just want anarchy, Mike. I just want those two teams to be as highly ranked as possible going into this game to make this big, important Kansas college football game.
I would love nothing more, Brandon. I got to spend a lot of time in Manhattan and the Little Apple over the last 3 or 4 years. I've developed a weird affinity for it. Lawrence is a kick-ass college town, and it's one of those schools that, like we've seen Mark Stoops get pissed off about at Kentucky. It's a basketball school. If you go and look at Lance Leipold's office and then go over and look at Bill Self's office, you could probably fit 10 of Lance Leipold's in Bill Self's office. But I'm saying it's the reality of the school. It's the way that school is perceived. It's a basketball school. Mario Chalmers' pictures all over that damn place inside that facility. That place is built on hoops. So for them to have this kind of success, especially coming off of how abysmal it got when Les Miles was there, really impressive testament to everybody involved.
To your point, I was thinking about basketball school versus football school. Mel Tucker and Tom Izzo's office are probably comparable.
Yeah. Mel Tucker, man. Mel Tucker, don't let anyone make you feel bad for securing the bag the way you did last year. Does a lot more of it look like it was tied to Kenneth Walker? Sure. Does that matter? No.
Not no more.
Just make sure when you get the chance, you advocate for the athletes to get the money that deserves to come to them.
True.
Because you're still allowed to go out here and pocket off that, and we don't knock anyone for that. Mel Tucker was awesome, kind enough to come on this podcast. Certainly root for him. Does a lot of cool stuff, and I think is trying to build the right things there. Just a little bit of a rough pass right now. It's always a reminder. I don't have a problem with coaches making money. Just make sure you advocate for the players to go out and get theirs whenever given the chance. And so far, Mel Tucker has done that. So no strays here being caught. Just the reality that their offices are definitely probably built the same because he is so breaded. Those are the roses from this weekend in the world of sports. If we missed any, at GoJo Show on Twitter is where you can try and correct us. Brandon, taking a look at the pick segment that we do on Friday that you have now very well renamed Six Thick Picks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We were some good, some bad this weekend. College, we had Michigan minus 10.5 against Iowa. That was a win. They took care of business. Kentucky plus 7 against Ole Miss. That game was awesome. One of the more fun games of the weekend, that back and forth there. Congratulations to Charlie Weiss Jr. and that Ole Miss offense with Jackson Dart. able to hold on and give the viral moment of the weekend. All those coaches up there in the coaches box camera getting caught celebrating like they just got pizza bites delivered to the basement at the sleepover, getting loose. Yeah. It was awesome. And then our lone loss in college was Friday night, UCLA smacking the shit out of Washington, who was giving 2.5 in that game. NFL, tougher weekend. Buffalo, Baltimore, over was 51. That was a loss. Chiefs +1 against Tampa. That was obviously one I was stunned that Tampa was giving points in that game, but a win's a win for the good guys. And then that Lions-Seattle under, which leads to the most insane stat of the weekend. I saw Dan Le Batard post from their Twitter account over at the Le Batard Show that the Lions have scored 140 points so far this season, 25 more than anyone else. I believe that number might have changed now since the Chiefs got added to that pile. They are the next highest scoring team in the NFL. But they have more points than the Vikings and Colts combined, more points than the Cowboys and Bears combined, nearly double the points that the Jets, Giants, Washington Commanders, Saints, Steelers, and Titans have scored. They're averaging 35 points a game, and they are 1-3 and in last place. And this game that they lost, by the way, the 48-45 loss to the Seahawks, was another one of those scores that we have not had. No NFL game has ever ended in the score of 48-45.
Love it.
And so we got scoregami on a Sunday, which was also very cool. But Brandon, I am a noted Lions stan. This is a Lions and Jags podcast as we have adopted those teams. And it's a sobering reality because they've also given up, I think, 140 points. That defense is a large part of why this team is not in the places that we want them to be at.
Mike, the fact that we've talked so positively about the Detroit Lions and the fact that they've deserved it almost made me very surprised to really realize that they're 1-3.
Well, and this game, we knew they were banged up. No DeAndre Swift, no Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had been fantastic. TJ Hawkinson, their tight end, had a full-blown day.
Most receiving yards I've ever won this today.
And Jared Goff's still their quarterback, so ultimately there is going to be a ceiling on what they can do. But that means we were 3-3 on the weekend, which puts the 6-pick. Feeling better about the direction we're going. We're going to keep trying to win you some money. But Brandon, if we can't win people money just right yet, in the meantime, we can at least make them feel.
Episode in October, Mike. Did the math. It's about 20 songs. I feel confident about 5. Thriller's going to be one of them. I need everyone's help on the backside. But we were going to make it. I'm looking for songs with spooky, scary, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. I tried to pitch that to Michelle. She said it doesn't really. You like that, right?
I think the devil's in it. I think that works.
Thank you. That's what I said. It's like if the devil, scary, spooky, if any of those words or trigger words are in it, I want it. But I do think it's going to make for a little less serenading and more just get to this, that, and keep it moving.
We love a good theme, man. We love a good theme that comes from people listening to this podcast. So again, at GoJo Show, you can give Brandon ideas, download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. 5-star ratings only. Leave a review and tell Brandon, one, how good a job he's doing at that, but also other spooky songs. We need help on this one because we want to give the people what they want, and we need your help to do that. Brandon, let's get to this, though. Part of what happened over the weekend, so much of our time at the end of last week was spent talking about Tua Tagovailoa and the injury that we saw suffered in their game this past weekend against the Bengals. We know Tua Tagovailoa was cleared to go back home with the Miami Dolphins, left on the team with them. We had the wild quote when Mike McDaniel, their head coach, was asked about this, who said that he and Tua Tagovailoa watched MacGruber on the flight home, and he laughed. And I know what Brandon, this is the thing. I know what he was trying to do. Like, we used to do a segment on when I was doing the radio show with Janae called Coach Speak, where we would interpret what Coach Speak. This is the other way where I've got to feed this in and give you the Coach Speak that Mike McDaniel should have said, which is, I got to sit with Tua on the plane ride home, and he was in great spirits. We're so happy that we could have him coming back with us. Yes. What he instead said was the very specific reference to a movie in MacGruber that is, first off, objectively hilarious. And the people that use this moment to slander what is objectively a funny and good movie, shame on you.
Yes.
It goes back to the Nickelback comparison. You're just doing it because you saw other people do it, and you're afraid to have your own opinion. Take your head out of the sand, sheeple. Walk into the light with us.
I mean, it's Will
But
Forte.
Brandon, in a sea of things around this, and we'll get to the updates on this, in a sea of things around this that are very serious, scary, and sad, I was in a taxi in Oregon, crying tears in the back, reading that quote, because Marcel Louis-Jacques, who tweeted that out, does a great job covering the Dolphins for ESPN. And I had to look at that tweet 5 times because I thought it was a parody tweet. I'm like, there's no way this grown-ass coach, and I say grown-ass like as if I'm not a grown-ass who got drunk and watched MacGruber, the TV show, on St. Patrick's Day this year. His grown-ass actually referenced that specific movie out loud in the midst of this shitstorm surrounding the Miami Dolphins. It was perfect.
Actually, it reminds me of a moment between you and I, Mike. Do you remember what movie we did a little shared headphones watching back in the day while we were traveling?
I don't, mostly because when we used to share headphones, we used to be watching the game on BET in the basement of the Student Center at Notre Dame.
Oh, my God. Yes, not that. I'm talking about our trip to Hawaii for the bowl game. I think I was done listening to music with Hafiz, and you were nearby, and you were watching There Will Be Blood, and you shared a little headphones, and that was a good movie to jump in on.
It was a good movie. I am not against sharing movies or wanting to believe that Mike McDaniel and Tua watched this on like a portable DVD player or something like that. I'm just saying, given the current environment, you maybe don't need to make as specific a reference, although now in hindsight, I kind of appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Either way, Brandon, what we had as far as the actual update on this was that on Saturday it was revealed that the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, the UNC, the spotter that we always hear about in these NFL stadiums, that was a part of this decision-making process, along with the Miami Dolphins training staff, the UNC that was involved in clearing Tua was fired after it was learned that he made several mistakes. Sources told ESPN's Marcel Louis-Jacques. The NFL and the Players Union said Saturday that modifications to the concussion protocol are needed. Tua was checked for concussions, and according to Dr. Alan Sills, who's the NFL's chief medical officer, he said that Tua was checked for concussion symptoms every day of that past week, including Thursday before the game. So you had all of this go on as we were trying to parse through all this information. The NFL then put out a joint statement with the NFLPA that said the investigation into the application of the concussion protocol involving Tua remains ongoing. Therefore, we have not made any conclusions about the medical errors or protocol violations. The NFL and the PA agree that modifications to the concussion protocol are needed to enhance player safety. And Brandon, that to me is where I always thought that this was going. Because once they fired the UNC, there were 2 reads of this. One was, all right, they found their fall guy. They can make this person at fault for what happened and say, look, we carved this out. That's never what this is about. This is far too complicated a situation about far too complicated an issue to just say it's as simple as carving out one bad actor. Right. But if you're the NFL, so much of this and so much of the way the response to this has been about PR, has been about the optics of what's gone on. Mm-hmm. And I thought when I heard this, the NFL is going to have to try and materially change something in this process and show it to us quick. Because if you're telling me the independent person you hired to do this is at fault, why am I supposed to trust anyone else involved in that the next time this happens? Why am I supposed to trust the next neuro spotter in this situation when it pops up again? If you show me in this one you're deeming them at fault, that becomes the tough part of this. And so if you're the NFL, I think you make it very clear, this is where we are getting these spotters from. This is how we go through the process of selecting them, and then this is exactly what we are going to change about the process. And the first chance you get to put that on display, if you're the NFL, you need to do that. And you need to be serious about it, because we can talk about that from the PR standpoint. They also need to just keep trying to fine-tune this to make sure that you're doing right by the player in a way that won't allow this to happen. There are a bunch of other issues that go along with this, but for the NFL, this is what you've got to address in the here and now. I listened to Dominique Foxworth and others talk about this. The subconcussive blows, other parts of this in a violent game like football are an unavoidable and real reality of the sport that part of me appreciates that we have to contend with as people that make money, watch, and enjoy this. But the NFL also doesn't get to just stop doing anything because perfect is the enemy of any sort of progress.
Yeah, Mike, I guess I just take pause to it because this is not an NFL problem exclusively. It can be, and it's being marketed as that or packaged as that. But just like America and race, head trauma issues in football is just kind of the one thing that's very, very hard to talk about and no one wants to bring up, and everyone wants to try to hire people to prove that they care and they're trying and they want to make it better. But like you talked about, or like Dominique Foxworth talked about, it's one of those issues that comes with the territory. And as much as we spin our wheels trying to make it so that it's better in the future, I'm looking forward to the innovation that gets implemented. But other than that, I really don't think it's something that can be helped.
No, there may not be an innovation that comes for that. And it's always a reality of the way that we have to think about this as people who played the game, as people who have a lot of friends and loved ones who have benefited from it, but who also have, had the physical issues that come along with that and what that could potentially mean down the road. It's always something that's kind of in the back of your mind. And that's why I don't like it when it goes the other way towards hysteria, because then it makes you analyze every part of your life and wondering if it's coming from or rooting in that. And I think that can be just as corrosive, because so much of this also, I think, gets born into guys making the transition out of football, guys struggling to find that next bit of identity. And so when things start going wrong, you already have stuff that you need to unpack and contend with. Being cognizant of this, being aware, and making sure you are mindful of it is not the same as ignoring it and pretending it's not happened. That's not what I'm advocating for. But when we had the movie come out and all the hysteria around that and the way that people would throw that around so readily, I also didn't think was helpful. Big, long soapbox way of saying it sounds like the NFL is going to make some changes based on what we saw happen with Tua. Brandon, let's get to that. Not the only ones making changes. Wisconsin has announced that they will be parting ways with their longtime head coach Paul Chryst after the Badgers lost 34-10 to Illinois this weekend. Wisconsin lost 52-21 to Ohio State the week before, and we're 2-2 on the season. We're less than that on the season, because they had also lost to Washington State 17-14 at home earlier in September. But Brandon, this one's kind of tough. So Jim Leonhard, who's been their defensive coordinator, was a former All-American player there, now takes over as the interim head coach. And there's part of me that looks at this situation where for Paul Chryst, he was 67-26 in his 7 seasons and change at Wisconsin. He won 10 or more games in 4 of his first 5 seasons. He won a Cotton Bowl, an Orange Bowl, and 3 Big Ten West titles, and was 4-3 in 2020, 9-4 last year, and it started off, 2-3 this year, and was fired. We've seen a lot of other places where that's backfired badly, where that can go badly, where you take for granted. Nebraska, when you look at what they parted ways with not too long ago, when you think you deserve that much more, but there are other things involved in this. I think last year, for a lot of Wisconsin people, seeing Jack Cohn, the quarterback that they chose Graham Mertz over, do so well at Notre Dame while Mertz struggled, certainly played into some of this. Yeah. But I think it's also, Brandon, because I saw people wondering if this was them being worried Jim Leonhard maybe courted at other jobs. And as was pointed out to me a while back when I saw Jim Leonhard's name come up, he had turned down the opportunity, it sounded like it was reported, to go and work and be a part of the defense, I believe the defensive coordinator job for the Packers, which would have been in his home state, huge pay raise, all that, and didn't do it. That guy wants to be at Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And I think it's less they were worried about losing him, and I would imagine more of they probably wanted to get a start on their future tomorrow. And if you let Paul Chryst do what I thought they might do, which is let him hang around for the season and then figure out something more amicable at the end, maybe there was part of them that didn't want to have Paul Chryst suddenly rattle off a bunch of wins, which he's definitely capable of, and all of a sudden make that process harder when they want to try and get to someone younger, someone they might believe will come in and energize the program in ways that Paul couldn't.
Yeah, Mike, I felt bad. This feels like the other shoe droppings from that video that you posted on GoJo show of him saying that no one would ever make a movie about his life. And he just seemed so resolute and finite in that moment. And I was like, this is a sad man that more sad things are going to happen to.
You know what? Brandon, I just think this is a man that's unbothered. And I tell you what, you don't have to make a movie, say anything nice about me. if you are also going to get cut somewhere in the neighborhood of $16.4 million, which is what he is owed if he is fired without cause. So, Paul Chryst, thanks for the memories. Enjoy the bag. I'm sure he will be more than happy and find a way into another job in football if he wants it, because he's still a guy very talented as a coordinator and now very rich to go sit and chill for a while.
This is not going to do well for me, Mike, and I know we're going to move on. But growing up, I always had my dad was a big Michigan fan. We were always watching the Wolverines, and Nebraska and Wisconsin always got like weird in my brain because of that big letter and the color and the Big Ten, and now this is going to continue to muddy the waters for me.
Well, because they're both searching for coaches at the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, they are very different looking letters, if that helps.
How? It's just like one swoop that's not there on the front half of the N.
One's an N and one's a W. They're not even the same font.
Bro, the W, draw a W and you see an N at the end of it.
Well, I understand that, but again,
it doesn't sound like you
different fonts. The end is up and down. The W would be a more tilted version of this. You're fighting a losing battle here.
Mike, up until I was 22, I got Wednesday and Saturday mixed up. So there's stuff going on in my brain anyways, which goes to the hysteria because, don't get me started, but it's very triggering every time I get something wrong and my brother's like, CTE.
Yeah, that's not the shit we're about around here. No, that being said, I'm going to help you with this Wednesday, Saturday problem as we go along on this show. We're going to make it very abundantly clear that in 2 days we won't be doing Saturday's podcast. But Brandon, let's get to the third. The third, we had some wild controversy in the world of fishing. Two competitors in the Lake Erie Walleye Trail contest were set to take home $30,000 in winnings last Friday when the tournament director started smelling something fishy, pun fully intended. And Jacob Runyon and Chase Kaminsky, who were the alleged participants in this, weighed their 5 walleyes at a collective 34 pounds, when usually each of those fish weighs closer to 4, so the expected total would have been about 20 pounds. And so Fisher cut open the fish's stomach and found an extra fillet of walleye and lead balls that had been stuffed down the throat.
Not lead balls.
And then he said he found some in the other fish as well here. These guys, I believe, had won somewhere in the neighborhood of, they had made more than $100,000 after winning the top prize at the Lake Erie Fall Brawl, but then were disqualified. So these guys have been racking it up, faking it till they made it in the world of competitive fishing, Brandon. And in a time right now where we are having so many people cape for Aaron Judge's home run chase as the true home run record and spurning the guys that were the heroes of my childhood and Barry Bonds, I won't stand for it in Major League Baseball. And for these guys, I'll say, bit different, but their only guilty thing here is getting caught here, because I'd imagine if we peek under the hood, competitive fishing has plenty more cheating going on. Every sport full of competitive people has someone trying to find an edge here. And so let he who is without the weighted down walleye cast the first stone on this one, because let's cutting open a lot of these other fish and see what's inside.
Yeah, Mike, I'm a little bit beside myself to see that this dynasty was cheating the entire time. Lead balls. It's just like, where's the competition? You know what I mean? And what are you doing it for? Like, this reminds me of Lance Armstrong, right? Like, you've gone too far in your cheating. Your perfection excellence has taken a step too far, and you're taking money out of the mouths of the people that are getting some pretty heavy walleyes.
Do you have more or less respect for these people or the people that were reportedly cheating in chess using vibrating anal beads to get a competitive edge?
The fishing, for sure. The anal beads is just dedication.
That's what I figured. Next level dedication for sure. There were some people, I like how after the fact they also tried to throw in, even more suspect, and this is according to an article in the New York Post, was the fact that the duo apparently didn't donate their catches to local food banks like the other competitors, the outlet said. Which seems like you're just throwing that in there. I don't think that's the thing they're really mad about. I think they're mad about the lead stuff inside of the fish, and they're just trying to pile on now, which is smart strategy if you're someone who just got fished out of $30,000.
Yeah, this was the this was the Scooby Doo moment where you take the mask off for the thing. It's like, I was wondering because your fish was never fed at the town meeting at the end of the day like it usually is. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is where I thought Jinkies, G Willikers.
You just threw a lot of Scooby Doo stuff in there. I feel like you were just trying to jam that inside the fish because you lost the point about halfway through that.
No, I couldn't find more specific Scooby Doo points, but this is it. It was we knew y'all was doing something fishy, pun intended, and then this is how we found out. And I think that was just a little bit of evidence. Those are receipts to reasons why they knew something was fishy with these brothers, and they waited. Whatever the fish, the bluegill? It wasn't a fish, but yeah,
walleye.
The walleye.
I will say, I guess it's just the cynic in me because when people get bent out of shape about the steroid era in baseball or something else, I'm like, a lot of people were probably doing this, and there's probably a lot of people in baseball and other sports cheating right now, and so I just want to know how deep this goes in the world of competitive fishing. Like, I've reached out to a couple of sources that I know around the world of fishing to try and just get a handle on how pervasive we think this problem is. Because, I mean, we would do shit like this at weigh-ins, or at least me and some of the guys that were lighter, guys that would cut weight would do certain things to do that. And we see that happen in the wrestling world all the time. But if I wanted to be up a couple pounds trying to sneak like a 2.5 pound weight into the back of a girdle or something like that, not an unheard of tactic in the world of just being a big ass meat stick yourself.
Oh my God. I mean, to see Jimmy weigh in for pro day, throw up and then go throw, I was like, oh yeah, everybody's.
Oh dude.
You got to game the system a little bit.
Well, I mean, listen, pro day, you would see a whole herd of, especially the offensive linemen, go up and get weighed, and then you would hear everyone go into the locker room and be leaned up against the wall of urinals, taking the most cathartic piss God had ever created, because you're so swollen with water just to try and get that number on the scale.
Mike, I first started growing my hair out into a box in preparation for pro day. I'm going to get these inches.
That was my favorite part, too. They teach you how to stand the perfect way and how to try and push your shoulder blades together and just fully extend. It's like, listen, like, this isn't going to stop it. The fact that I got steamrolled by too many 3 techniques when we were playing BYU and USC is probably going to be the thing that undermines my credibility when it comes to draft eligibility here. If I'm 6'4" and a quarter and 300 pounds instead of 299, if that makes a lot of difference, we've got to ask more about the process here. But that didn't stop me from almost pissing my girdle on top of that scale.
I was going to lay out and let you in the podcast because I could go on and on about pro day hacks and cheats and now I want to do 225 again. There's a bunch of stuff. My mind's racing.
All right, well, you know what? We'll save you and I potentially recreating pro days for pro day season when we get to the spring and see if we can go back and compete at Notre Dame's pro day and not tear every ounce of our hamstring. But while we don't condone cheating, we appreciate everyone that made it to the end of this podcast by any means necessary. If you enjoyed the experience, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel under the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.